When we have openings, we have this sense of kind of no self or no identification with the self, kind of a freeing up of that. But it's momentary or short lasting. But it seems that in your case at least, the key is that it's no longer short. It's always. The sense of self of no self is realized so much that it's gone. It seemed to be completely have no reality at all. So I don't know exactly what the question is, but there's a dividing line, or it happened spontaneously. You said, or did it? I'm not sure anymore. I just wanted you to kind of talk about that a little bit.
So yeah, the dividing line is what I call the shift. And again, we need to be clear on terminology. So yeah, it's an identification that goes, that in the shift that goes completely. So again, to clarify, that doesn't mean that history of the personality can't come up. Still have resonances from the past. That can certainly happen. But the thing is that when they do, well, there's this thing which I touched on last week, which is that they're more free to come up. Ironically, you might think that sounds insane because I'm beyond blah blah blah. Well, no, in the way life goes, everything's held in place by our identification with the personality, which means the dream of personality is held in place. So when that isn't operating, things that the personality were controlling and keeping in place, for example, I don't know, a part of your wound or a very difficult feeling or even a belief that you had, let's say a very difficult feeling, it's the personality has very effectively packaged it away and hidden it away. So without that operating system being in charge, the gate, the fence around it has kind of gone. So then it can come up. So that's one outcome of the shift.
And that makes sense. Kind of like everything is allowed to float up to the surface. It had been held down.
Yeah.
So, but what I'm really interested in is what, I think all of us in the group, we see the nature of the self. It has no substance, but it keeps coming back and we keep re-identifying with it. But at a certain point, in your case, it didn't. It's completely seen that even when these residues come up, I presume that very quickly they're seen to be to really fall apart again.
Well, it would take as long as it takes, and it could still be very painful. So I just want to place that out there.
Yeah.
It's not like a magic key where you don't have to face what you have to face. So, but I need to bring in this other clarification on the nomenclature, I believe is the word. You're using the word self, and there's the difference between the self and the personality. And, my way of putting it is we all have a self. We all need a self to live this life, but we don't all need a personality.
Okay. Now I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah. Really, really important clarification.
Mm-hmm.
And I would even use the word in this, rather than I am beyond the self, there's the celebration of the self, because it is part of the great mystery. The way that you manifest your character, the fact that we can do this, all of that is a product of the self. So, but then you've got this question of identification with the self. Well, it's like you're also not identified with the self, because it's, what can you say, it's the great mother manifest. It's the absolute manifesting in this tiny corner of the universe for this short time. But even though you're not identified with it, consciousness plays it out, and that is part of the wonder of life, I would say. But so this is why the distinction of the use of the word personality is so important, and so fundamental, I think, because again, the personality you can live without. It's a bit like there's some organs you can live without. You can live without the gallbladder, and live a perfectly fine life. And you can live without the personality, and you will live I would say, in the end, in terms of this anyway, a much more free life.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's helpful then. I'm using the word self, but there's a difference between that and the personality. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
But yes, the identification with it can go fully. And that, again, that opens to other questions. It's like, is that the end of suffering? Obviously, from what I said, no. But it's the end of a certain kind of suffering that comes from the identification with it. There's still suffering. There's normal suffering from, life. As I always say, somebody dies, somebody's ill, there's that sort of suffering. Somebody's suffering and you feel bad for them, all of that. Of course, that's still there because you're a human being and you have fulfilling engagement with life. But there's also, it's not just that, because there is, as I've just said, a certain kind of conscious suffering of like, well, you have been identified with this thing for 40, 50, 60, whatever years. And there's a weight to it. There's a resonance to it in the system that, life heals through feeling and seeing. So it's seen and it's felt and then it's finished with. That's the only way it can happen, Yeah.